Hello everyone, Zeldarinth here, and for today's video on Umamusume, we're going to be talking a little bit about making the best possible parents you can with this new auto system that'll be coming out here. Hopefully with the 1.5 anniversary. We don't actually have a verified confirmed date, other than in the announcement they were talking about the 1.5 anniversary as well. But when it comes out, this is going to give us a lot of potential to really kind of try and min-max the affinity on our Umas through the dirt rotation, which will actually be a little bit easier to do with this auto because it does cheat to a certain extent based on what people have seen with testing. And then potentially in Grand Live, it will be possible to actually get SS on the Umas, making it even easier in the short term, but also on the long term with this auto, especially for the people that really get burnt out on doing a lot of grandparent and parent runs. And so right now I have up my calendar, and I've showed this in prior videos, but this has been something I've been really kind of theory crafting with the math we have on the chances for Umas to win, and what looks like it'll be the easiest to use in terms of getting the most amount of wins on the races and the highest affinity amongst them. You do have to make one sacrifice in this calendar, but it should work very well. And so this is basically your main dirt rotation if you've seen it before. It's pretty much every single G1 possible that you can do. And of course you can't do if they overlap, like on some of them where you have to choose one or the other. Of course you can't do both of them, but this does every single G1 except one. And that is on the very last race here in early November. Normally, if you're doing dirt rotation right now manually, you would do the JBC Classic here. And so you would just do these 7 races in a row. And of course, at this point, hopefully you've gotten your Uma strong enough that they just can win all of these, even though they're getting a crap ton of mood downs here. But with the auto, and we know the way we know it works, this is going to be one that you actually will want to skip. And you want to keep it down to only doing 3 races in a row at a minimum here. And this is based off the calculator that they created in JP that shows the percentage chances of winning races based on what your Uma is good at. So AA, bringing them up to a 110%, AB, 100%. And then based on how many races they do, you'll get some penalties. At 3, it's minus 10%. More than that starts really racking them up at 25, 35, and minus 50% at 6 in a row, which is why I was saying you're needing to skip that JBC Classic to avoid these big negatives. Now, what this is really doing with the auto too is allowing you to take Umas that normally won't be able to win certain races, the dirt ones being the biggest ones, but you can include maybe longs, if your Uma's not naturally gifted at longs as well, into the calculation in the sense that you have, if they're A, at least in the distance, then even if they're G in dirt, they will have a 50% chance to win. And then of course, if that dirt is at a point where you have 3 races in a row, then it brings it down to 40, which is a little low. But still, fairly good shot. Now with dirt rotation though, you can actually bring this up even higher, because you can get, with a lot of Umas, you can get the distance A, and then you can get dirt to C. So if they're dirt G, you can bring them all the way up to C. And depending on the circumstances, maybe you can only bring it up to D or E. But as you can see, the odds are still very good at 8, 90, 80, and 70% chance to win the races. And that is why dirt rotation will be very, very good, because there's so many races that you can add. And if you think about it, each G1 is worth 3 points per matching for the parent and the grandparent, and that really, really adds up to the point that if you've probably checked some of the affinity, if you've been doing dirt rotations at all amongst some of your Umas, especially ones that have a naturally high affinity together, you're starting to see where you're getting into the 400s potentially, which really makes it much easier to get a lot of your skills. Now, when it comes to showcasing how this dirt rotation will work when it comes to making aces, because I know that I've seen some people confused on, well, you got all these dirt sparks, but you want to build an ace, and on the ace, you want to get, say it's a medium race, you want to get medium S. But with all these dirt sparks, now you're going to have a problem where it's going to be hard to get medium S because you have all these dirt sparks. And that is where this little spreadsheet that someone in chat here gave me, they're actually currently in chat now, I think Sade Drawers showed me this little tool here. There's a way to actually plan out your dirt rotations to kind of min-max the ability to win using this calculator while having 0 dirt sparks impacting the ace themselves. And I have an example of a front runner here as well as a end closer. And these are just generic examples. Of course, depending on what you're building and what parents and grandparents you need, these will be adjusted. This is just going to be an example to showcase how you can plan around it. Now, this might be a little bit confusing, and it might look like it's a lot of work, but that is where this auto is going to be very useful because, yes, it's going to take a lot of runs to get these setups going, but auto is going to make that a breeze. You just 50 minutes, every 50 minutes, you can do a run, basically, to try and get this set up. We're going to use a front runner one for an example here, and we actually used a more complicated setup here to really try and show like the most difficult ones to set up. That a lot of the setups you might work with might not be this difficult, but we went with a front runner that's trying to get, of course, you got to get Seiyun Sky, you want to get Mihono Bourbon, you want to get TM Opera O's generically good, and then Fuji Kiseki's generically good. These Umas have more problems than just dirt. Fuji Kiseki being bad at longs and dirts, TM Opera O being bad at miles and dirts, and then Mihono Bourbon, of course, being bad at dirts. Seiyun Sky not being good at miles, and not being good, well, only C in mile, and then G in dirt. But with this setup, as you can see here, how this little thing works, and I'll have a link to this in the description, is you actually can plan out all of the chains based on what your pink spark is, and it's going to tell you what they're going from and to. So like as you can see here, Fuji Kiseki is going from dirt F to dirt C. You have the Seiyun Sky going from G to E here, mile C to A. And this is how you can really figure out what you need when it comes to dirt rotation and planning them for your future CMs. And if you look at the very tippity top, the ace, this ace has 18 sparks of medium. And so this ace right here doesn't have to worry about getting any dirt sparks into it that are interrupting them trying to get medium. And how this is working is, if you heard me talking about it before, it comes all the way down to the great-grandparents and grandparents all the way at the bottom. These ones do not matter what Uma they are, which is why you don't see any actual pictures of Umas here. They're just generic Umas. So we don't care. We only care about the pink sparks here. And this is where it really comes into play. So now this is translated from JP, so just know that like Da, that's dirt, Shiba is turf, Naga is long, medium, MA is mile, short is sprint, then you have front runner. I mean, it's the same order as it is in the game here. So these great-grandparents, they don't matter to the ace. The great-grandparents right here only matter to the grandparents, and they only matter to the parents. So these sparks right here are helping move your grandparents and parents up. Now the great-great-grandparents all the way on the bottom here only go towards the grandparents here. And so this is where it kind of becomes a puzzle depending on what the Umas want. So we'll use the Seiyun Sky, for example. And you kind of, when you're planning these out, you work backwards. Seiyun Sky needs dirt and mile. Now, mile's the most important one to get up because the bulk of your races are mile. And if you can just get your mile all the way up to A, and of course, if you're turf A, by default, you're going to win every single one of them. You will not lose any of your turf miles if they're mile A and turf A. Yeah. Now, because some of them you will get the 3 races in a row, but nice enough is if you're at 100% or 110% by default, it gets subtracted down to 100%. So you will win all of them because you're not going to be doing more than 3 in a row. So getting mile A is very important, even if you're having to sacrifice a little bit on trying to take dirt up to C and having to like live with just getting it to E. So you go from a 90% to a 70% on that. It's just the sacrifices you're going to have to make with certain very difficult to build Umas, which we'll see that even more so on an end closer example. So since Seiyun Sky did need mile sparks, we were only able to take her from dirt G to E and mile C all the way up to A. And how we did that is if you look down here at our sparks here. Now, Fuji Kiseki's already mile A. So we know the great-grandparents, we're not going to want to put mile sparks to get them to Seiyun Skies up because Fuji doesn't need them. But guess who does need miles? TM Opera O needs miles. And so how we plan hers is we put the mile sparks that, some of the mile sparks that she needs to go to bring her up to mile A on the great grandparents. So they bring her mile up, as well as then bringing Seiyun Sky all the way up with the miles here. Then you go down to here. Now we have, so we got Seiyun Sky set up on mile. There's where our mile sparks are, right here. These 5 mile sparks are helping TM Opera O, and they're helping Seiyun Sky. That's hers done. Now we can move down into this side of things, and you can see TM Opera O, even with 5 mile sparks, still needs more mile sparks. She's mile each. She needs a lot of mile sparks. And so then we can go down into the great grandparents to try and finish her off. This can be really hard to see because they're all kind of squished together here. But just know the grandparent ones are these 4 right here. I believe. Let me see. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Okay, these 4 right here. I miscounted there. So we have another 5 mile that we put on these ones. These 5 mile are giving her, these 5 mile plus these 5 mile are bringing her up to 10 sparks a mile. That brings her up to mile A. So the only thing left for TM Opera O is getting as many dirt sparks as you can, which is these 2 right here. We have dirt 5. You could get away on this one actually with dirt 2, because 4 gives you 2 increases. So if you only have 4 stars of dirt, it'll work for her. In a lot of cases, you're going to try and get at least one side to be 3 and the other side to be 2, so that you have 5. So if you double them up, it brings it up to 10. But in this case, if you only had 4, it would work. But that brings her from dirt E all the way to C. Now, normally you can bring her all the way up to dirt A, but if you try and work it in to do that for her, well, she's dirt A or E and mile E. It's not possible to have enough sparks, so you can't have 10 and 10. And so this is TM Opera being fully complete, and then you have all your mile sparks for Seiyun Sky. Now, we don't have any dirt sparks going to Seiyun Sky yet from the TM Opera O side, and that's where we go onto the Fuji Kiseki side. She needs long and dirt. Seiyun Sky doesn't need long, she only needs dirt. So right off the bat, you just throw dirt on the great grandparents for Fuji Kiseki, and then down here, you just mix in whatever she needs. She also needs, we're trying to get a medium spark for her, for medium, since this is a medium one, and she is also medium B. So we, by default, put a single medium spark in here to get her medium A. We want to bring her long up from long E to at least C. So we put longs here. And then the remainder, we put a single dirt. Or was it, do we have 2 dirts here? Oh, no, we have 5 dirt here. We put a 2 dirt down here. That brings her up to 7, which then brings her from F all the way to C. And then when you look at the math up here, with long C, dirt C, and medium A, you have A, and for the longs, your turf A and long C, which means 90% chance to win her longs. For the dirts, she is dirt C, and then the distance A, mile and medium. So 90% chance to win all of her dirts, except a couple of them, where she does 3 in a row, that brings it down to an 80% chance. So with this setup, Fuji Kiseki is going to win 90%. All of her races are 80% or better in her win chance. Same thing with TM Opera O. So they're going to share a ton of the dirt ones. And then when you go up to Seiyun Sky, she's A, mile, medium, and long. The only one she's bad on is dirt. I mean, it's just the thing. Since she is mile C and dirt G, it's just a sacrifice you're having to make here. Being dirt E, though, does bring her up to a 70% chance to win the dirts. And then she is 100% chance on everything else. So if you think about it, you have 70% of the dirts, and then you have most of the dirts on this side, and now you're good to go. And you should have, I would say, if you kind of round it around, when you get your high rolls, you'll probably share about 80% of the racetracks in the long run. I mean, this is going to take a long time. This is why the auto's good. You're going to be doing a ton of runs per day if you're willing to put in the effort, or, well, spend the carrots to do the extra runs, I guess. And you will share all those. I think you can apply kind of the same thing over here. Mihono Bourbon being a little bit easier. She's already medium A. And then the B's on long and mile don't really impact her too much, as it just brings her down to 100%. There's like 1 or 2 that'll have the minus 10% for 3 in a row, bringing it down to 90. But you're able to get her all the way up to dirt C, which then also gives her the ability to have a 90% chance on all the dirts, except an exception here or there for the 3 in a rows that brings it down to 80. So she wins the bulk of her races, and then you basically have the same situation down here, because these are theoretically the same TM Opera O and Fuji Kiseki as these ones. Actually, maybe not, because we have miles on this TM Opera O, but dirts on these. So these would be two different TM Opera O's to make this team work. So this is one kind of example here. I won't talk it all the way through on this next one here, but this is just another example we were working through here on stream, which would be an end closer kind of example, or a late surger with a Dober, Ogre Cap, and then you have Major Orion and the grandparents with, of course, a special week. They're a little bit tricky, but doing the same thing, mixing the dirts all on the top here, and then a mixture of some miles and dirts down here. We're able to get mile A on all of them that need the mile sparks. We're able to get dirt C on everything they need to dirt. We're able to get Ogre Cap super easy. You're getting her to dirt A. She's long B. And then Dober here, dirt C. Her biggest thing is she, of course, is long F. A sacrifice you'll have to make on that, but with dirt C and long F, as you can see here, you'll have a 60% chance to win your longs. And then dirt C, of course, like we already showed, you can win a bulk of those. And you can even plan it out, depending on the Uma's careers, that maybe you're willing to sacrifice one of these and swap it out to have a higher chance. So if, for example, you wanted to make sure you won the Arima Keenan, and you have a 60% chance, you can just double up the Arima Keenan potentially. This is just kind of a thing here. It's the same reason I have Sprinter Stakes doubled up. The reason you do Sprinter Stakes twice is, one, it's the first race, so you don't have any minuses to it. And as long as they're turf, as long as they're turf A, then even if they're G, it's a 50% chance. You get 2 tries at it, which brings it up to a 75% chance to win the Sprinter Stakes. So, in my opinion, there's absolutely no reason not to have your Umas always do the Sprinter Stakes as long as they're turf A. But that is pretty much just kind of an example of how you can plan it out. This is just 2 generic examples. If you have an Oshi and you have a specific CM that you know yours coming up, you can kind of work around what kind of grandparents or great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents you're going to need to make it work. And now to kind of show you an example of what I've got so far within my game, just as a quick example of the very initial start of me making these puzzle pieces for different Umas. I mean, this is a very long process. This is like, you're not going to have this perfected. I mean, if you're going to, this is a long term. Like, just don't expect to have all these immediately. But just think of that when you're doing your parent runs and the potential you may have, even if you hit the wrong pink, can it work somewhere else? And so one example we'll use is my first attempt at trying to get some long sparks, because long's a pretty tricky one to get into your rotation. But I have this Ogre Cap here. So I've been doing dirt rotation, as you can see down here. I had 2 dirts I brought into it, but this Summer Maruzensky had a long spark in its grandparents that brought her up to long A, and on this one she sparked long. And so this is already a start of making those great-great-grandparents that have that mixture. So in this case, I have a parent now that has a long and a dirt. So if there's an Uma that calls for it, Fuji Kiseki being one example, she can work for her. It'll just depend on what the parent I'm making is. I also have this one, which is a dirt with that Ogre Cap. So this is a dirt with a long dirt. So maybe there might be a grandparent and parent that I need to make that needs this setup. Well, I got this piece of the puzzle now. Eventually, I'll want one that's dirt on the top and long on the bottom. Or in case I need long sparks on the grandparent, but not the parent, I only need dirt sparks on them. And so this is the kind of process you need to think about when it comes to doing dirt rotation and just kind of rotating them in and saving off all these little pieces that you might need depending on future grandparents and parents. It's a long and tedious process, and I know it might be a little bit confusing, but this is how you can truly min-max that affinity and take advantage of all of these dirt track races coming out. The biggest ones I just use are the ones I kind of use as an example here. If I go in here, I can kind of show it. So if I was to want to build a grandparent Fuji Kiseki now, I can throw her in and this Ogre Cap, and I get her to dirt C and long C, which was what the one example I used was. And then if she gets made and I have a good grandparent out of her, she will have dirt and long. So maybe the next parent I'm making might need a long spark. So a good example of that could be, I might be making a parent ogre cap for maybe a long. Let's just think it's a long. Well, if I'm making a parent ogre cap for a long, I need a long spark. I need her to have a long to even get a long pink spark. Well, those parents are absolutely going to be that Fuji Kiseki will be perfect for her because it will have 2 long for her, plus 2 dirt to bring her up to dirt 8 as well. So that's one example there. And there's all kinds of different, there's a million different ways or variations of this that it could work out. And so that is why you will want to, if you really want to plan this out for your future runs and aces and parents and all that, you can kind of utilize this tool to figure out what Umas you might want to work with here. TM Opera O, we all know, is pretty generically good one, but very tricky because she's Mile E and Dirt E. Fuji Kiseki with the Dirt, was it Dirt F and, yeah, Dirt F and Long E, and then also Medium B. Medium B really makes it tricky for making her a medium parent, but very much easier for making her a Long and Mile since she's already A in those 2 things. But yeah, that is basically dirt rotation and how it can work. And just one last thing here, I can kind of show the calculator that we used to use a long time ago before they really kind of added it in to the Chronogenesis calculator. I mean, the whole reason for this is to get this affinity as high as possible, because when you look at the math here, you're changing these by a decent chunk of percentage points, which is going to make it much easier to get higher and better inspirations. You've probably already noticed the difference just from the affinity update. If you know before the July 1st update, if you've been doing parent runs, you're probably getting decent inspirations. But after that July 1st update, it was very, very noticeable, especially if you've been doing dirt rotations with the G1s, on how much higher your affinity was from all the G1s matching. And that is the point of doing this rotation. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for this video. And if you like my content, if you like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.